Richard McPherson, you're back, sir. How are you?
I am great, and it is so appropriate that we're talking on Friday because all this week, and about electricity, because all this week I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from in years. People are waking up to the fact that electricity is a big problem.
Listen, I had Adam Rishens in, who's the COO of Idaho Power. He came in, his episode dropped Thursday, and he said that it used to be, if you were involved in energy, it's like you go to a party, you sit on a panel, nobody cared. Like, whatever. He's like, now, if I go and sit on a panel, there are 4 people, 3 people just sit there quietly while everybody asks him questions nonstop, because people, I agree with you, are very much waking up to the energy plight of the United States.
He's a good one because he's CEO of a utility. So he's in a position to know. He has not been in a position to adequately express to the public the situation, but the public is waking up to the situation. The politicians are waking up to it. And more than ever, I've seen this week, people that are in business, including very large businesses, are waking up to the fact that we have a critical need for electricity in the United States.
Hit me, man. What have you heard this week?
Okay, so
and of course, if I may, to be clear, we're in this position because although it appeared in the early 1950s that we would have so much energy from nuclear, it would effectively be free. We wouldn't even have meters. We'd just be flowing power everywhere. We're not in that situation because although with the end of this pen, you could have produced as much as 120 barrels of oil of energy. With the end of this little pen, we opted out of that. Well, by the way, the rest of the world did not. We have international adversaries that have collected our nuclear fuel supplies or rights to our nuclear fuel supplies or are leasing the fuels to us so they can recycle them in their own countries and then sell that fat back to us. Man, it's a lot. So here we go. Go for it.
So going back to the early 1950s, I don't recall the first year they started, but General Electric probably had the most aggressive program. And they used to have this all-electric house program. And contractors all over the nation built these all-electric houses. And they had an emblem that was from General Electric they put on the front of each house.
Oh, so it was like the original green energy house, just no.
It wasn't called green,
sure,
but it was all electric.
Sure.
And I used to have one of those, and along the way somewhere I loaned it to somebody, and it's gone.
Wait, an all-electric house?
Well, the emblem.
Oh,
there was an emblem from General Electric.
Oh, gotcha.
The contractors could put on each house they built that was all electric, no natural gas, no oil. No oil for the oil heaters, no more coal for the heaters, all electric houses. And they built those by the thousands around the country. And each one of them on the door handle or right next to the door that went into the house, there was an emblem.
Like this.
Let me see a little closer. Something like that, but it specifically said General Electric on it. And
that's so wild.
I used to have one of them.
That's wild.
And I had one of them forever, and it disappeared. I don't know what happened to it.
Oh, my gosh.
And at the same time, people were saying electricity will be the cost of electricity will be so low we can't meter it. Well, all of us in the industry know that. It's not true.
I didn't know you were going to talk about this today. I was recently educated on the whole sentiment that it was like, hey, it's going to be so cheap we won't even worry about it anymore.
I know. But
we're on like the same wavelength.
But that's because you're aware of energy, you're aware of electricity.
Right.
I mean, you are doing what should have been done from the 1950s on by the utilities themselves, by General Electric, by Combustion Engineering, by Westinghouse, and all these others. And they made feeble, they won't like me saying this, but their attempts were feeble. and they were not continuous attempts to educate the American people about electricity and where does it come from. And the first person that I knew that did that was in the American Nuclear Society section in San Diego. And it was a woman, and she was the educational chair there in San Diego in 1975. And she had put together a program called Electricity, What Is It? Where does it come from? And another program was Radiation Naturally. So she got support out of companies like General Atomics. And the guys over at General Atomics who were designing and building things at the time, including trying to build a gas-cooled reactor, a high-temperature gas-cooled reactor, they built her a tabletop model of a steam plant. It had a boiler, and you put water in it. It had a generator, and it had a light bulb. And you used like a Bunsen burner, but it was in a tank to heat up this boiler. And pretty soon you had steam coming out, turning the turbine, and generating electricity. There was a question raised by one of the anti-nuclear people about how safe this was to be in the hands of people than in front of other people.
A steam boiler?
Yeah,
or a little boiler?
But a little tiny one. But the guys at General Atomics, they did the calculations of what it would take for that thing to blow up. And it's not going to happen. So at every point, where anti-nuclear people have tried to prevent the education of Americans about energy and especially nuclear power, when you get right down to it, they don't have a leg to stand on. And that was proved then. But anyway, going back to this woman.
Wait, you wouldn't, if we're worried about how much pressure in a dumb little steam thing, we wouldn't be able to sell a pressure cooker anywhere in the United States. Like those bad boys are just bombs waiting to go off. Yet we have the one pot. That's like that thing with like locks into place. I'm not a big pressure cooker guy, but like we tried. It's like my
they
wife
exist.
Yeah, they exist. Everybody
They exist everywhere.
Yeah.
Not only that, but since 1956, I don't recall how many are around still today. I think there were 66 at the peak. But we still have microreactors in universities all around the country. They're called the trigger reactor. They were created in the mid-1950s by the same company, GA Technologies or Gulf Atomics or General Atomics. They were created by the same company. They're in universities all around the country. They're microreactors that are capable of producing, for a short period of time, much high power level than anybody could imagine. And they're operated, the whole idea was they should be able to be operated by high school students.
Wait, we currently have those.
They currently exist in the United States. I don't remember how many we have right now. I would venture to say there's got to be at least 30 of them still operating in the United States.
And these were built back in the 50s.
Well, they were started in the 50s. I don't know when they delivered the last one, but they're still being supported. They're still being used for teaching and training.
Right.
The closest one that I'm aware of is over at Oregon State University. And I've been through that one. And it's an interesting situation over there because the guy who runs it, his wife has been in charge of the nuclear engineering program for the Oregon State University. And as she said to me one time, when it comes budget time, we have some interesting conversations around the dinner table that the children have to leave. But they're around, and they've been operating. We've probably got one been operating in the United States since the 50s.
Wow. And again, like when you talk about safety and, if you consider every nuclear reactor, commercial grade, municipal,
Right.
like energy producing nuclear system in the world.
Right.
We have three major instances. One was a tsunami. One was a core meltdown. Nobody even died. And then you have Chernobyl. And we've talked about that at length. But then once you start layering on, and again, how many of these things exist worldwide? right? How many are in France? How many are in, the Scandinavian countries? How many are in Russia? Like, I mean, let alone the fact that Chernobyl was the incident in Chernobyl was a product of a reactor type that had 10 identical twins that were like, nobody's ever had a problem with those. So how many exist worldwide, right? How many problems have we had? And then you scale it down. It's like, yeah, man. But we got these things like that. Go to classroom 212.
Yep.
They got a micro reactor in there, and you can produce, a megawatt or something. I don't know. It's like, it's wild that we have all of this, and it's all operating, and they have been operating. And it's like, I don't know what more people would want from a practical standpoint.
That's why I respect you and value what you're trying to do is to get people educated about energy and nuclear power, because it's been a futile attempt by many people and good people that are heads of these utilities, well-meaning people, knowledgeable people. They have to spend so much time on public policy and meeting the requirements of the Securities Exchange Commission, meeting the requirements of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the other liabilities they face under Sarbanes-Oxley and things like that they haven't adequately educated the American public. You're the first person that I have known in my lifetime, or I happen to know you, most of the others I didn't, but you're the first person I know in my lifetime, and I've been in this business since 1963, that's trying to fairly and adequately inform the American public about energy, electricity, and where nuclear power fits in.
Well, God bless you for that, sir. I mean, I'm doing it because I met you. So let's keep hammering this. Electricity all week long.
Electricity all week long. People have been calling me up. I've gotten calls from most of the people I know already, but some of them I haven't heard for a while. I've heard from people in Texas, Louisiana, California, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, Florida, Tennessee. I don't know where else.
There's just no way to avoid the gorilla in the room, right? Like, it's compounding, right? You have an 8% energy. The pitch for solar back in my former life, right? Guy comes and like, I was not against it. All he had to say was like, look, man, here's the deal. This is how much it costs if you get solar. It's like this flat line. And he's like, and Pacific Gas and Electric has been going up 8% every year. Every year. On average, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, 8% every year. Now, remember, I really enjoy math, and I was instantly like, oh, no. It's like, so by year 7, I was like, oh, no. And like the curve just essentially goes. Now, mind you, he was wrong in that when I did, in fact, purchase solar, I think it was like 2016, PG&E hasn't gone up by 8%. It's way more annually. And it's only accelerating. And again, 8% of every additional year. It's not like, no, we're going to go up $8. It's like, no, it goes up 8%. And then you get the 8% of the 8. It's compounding interest, right?
Compounding.
Like, it's so unbelievable. And now to see what people are doing in areas with high electrical costs to deal with this. First off, the quality of life decreases considerably. When we first moved here and it got really hot in the summer, and I asked people, I'm like, what do you set your AC to? Like 76? They're like, oh, I have mine at 68. I was like, what? I set my heater at 68 in the winter, and you just don't realize that you don't have to live in this difficult existence, but you do if power is super expensive. And again, so I'm not surprised that you're hearing from all across the country, because you hit a certain threshold. It's like, this is untenable. They're like, well, it's about to get worse next year. Like, we're about to eat this percentage increase or that percentage increase.
The single thing in America that provides the best quality of life is electricity, power, and air conditioning. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. It's as simple as that. So if you go back, and of course you were in another state where they had higher rates. I just got this week, guy called me from that state, and I haven't heard from him in a long time. And he somehow found the podcast. So he called me up and he said, please keep doing what you're doing. I said, no, I'm going to quit because he doesn't pay me enough.
Oh.
How much does he pay you? I said, nothing. He said, then why are you going to quit? I said, I'm not going to quit. I'm just giving you a hard time. I don't know what he is doing in that state anymore, but he says that the tariff that he is on,
Yeah,
I think it's 51 cents a kilowatt hour.
Sounds about right.
51 cents a kilowatt hour. Get serious. So let's go back to another state, and let's go back to 2023. So the principal utility in the state of Wyoming proposed that they were going to have a 30% increase in electricity in 2025.
May I say one quick thing?
Sure.
He's at 51 cents a kilowatt as long as they can supply energy. Right? So
he goes through brownouts. He goes through blackouts.
So not only is he paying close to the highest in the entire country, but they can't even deliver it. They literally don't have the power. And then if we looked at a map, you just see portions of the state in and out. Like, it's like looking at a skyscraper with lights turned off.
Yep.
And they just oscillate the lights, and everybody's got to do their part. We don't have enough to go around. You got to take your brown out, and you got to take your brown out. So it's not even a question of how much can I pay you to keep consistent power. There's nothing you can pay me to keep consistent power.
It gets worse in California.
Oh my God.
So I'm saying, well, you have the advantage of all the wind and solar there during the day. You have more than enough power, and I don't know why they're not lowering the rate during the day for you. He says, well, they're not, but he says, it doesn't matter that we have all that wind and solar. We still have blackouts with all that wind and solar overcapacity in California.
Man, I'm sorry. Wyoming. So in 23, in 23, they're saying they're going to have an increase in the year of 25.
They proposed, 23. It does. I think it was 23.
Okay.
So there was a proposed rate increase. It was 2023. There was a proposed rate increase by the utility. They went to the Wyoming Public Utilities Commission, and they said, we are filing for a 30% across the board increase in cost of electricity.
A global cost, which includes industry, irrigation, residential.
I guess it was everything.
Cow.
Well, guess what? The people of Wyoming woke up. And when the hearings were held, they showed up at the state capitol. And the Public Utilities Commission was not ready. And the utility was not ready for all the people that came forward and said, we're not putting up with this. So guess what they got? It was in November, I think, of 23. They got instead of a 30% increase, they got a 5% increase. So at the time, I'm calling around to friends of mine, and I'm asking them, what did your increases in the state this year? Well, several of them knew what it was, and they told me it looks like it's around 9%. Well, 9% is a long ways from 30%, but it's still above 5%. Then today, driving here, I'm listening to the news, and they say that the people in Idaho, or in this area, whatever Idaho Power serves, we're going to get a 17% increase. Why are we getting the 17% increase? Hopefully, Idaho Power will tell the people why we're getting a 17% increase.
I'll tell you right now. Turn on the episode with Adam Rishens that published yesterday. We talked for almost an hour, and it took that long to explain all of the details about. Now, one thing that they don't articulate to you with the 17% increases last year, you know what our increase was?
No.
Negative 10%. So you have to realize that there's an energy exchange where they go through these oscillations. So last year, the global overall across all portions, they had a 10% drop. And this year across all different customer bases, they have a 13% increase. So you go from 100 down to 90, that's a 10% drop. And then you go up 13% of that 90 and you go to 101.7. So the delta, we actually pay less right now than we did 2 years ago. And over the last 15 years, we have had on average, I think, a 1.3% increase annually. So that's not to say that we don't have to talk about electricity, but it is to say that Idaho Power, it goes through these oscillating periods where they engage in arbitrage in the electrical market, for instance.
Sure.
So we have battery technology. So places like California or Washington might actually have a glut of wind or solar at some point. They pay us because they can't get rid of it. They actually pay to get rid of it because you're generating the power. You can't stop generating the power. We actually store our batteries because they have batteries to just suck the stuff up, and then they turn around and sell it back to them at night when they need it again. So the point is that there is an answer. I'm not saying we should be happy about the 17, but there are answers to this.
But the 17% increase is to you and I.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean what Idaho Power is paying. Idaho Power has shareholders, and they're making more money for their shareholders. So if they're going to get a 17% increase, what does that mean for us? It means a 17% increase. What does it mean for Idaho Power that, as you have said, they can be paid to take excess power from other states during the course of the year? What is that differential, which the public does not see?
No. That gets passed directly on to the ratepayer. They don't take a penny of that. Unless Adam was not telling the truth, we addressed that exact question.
Great question. And whatever he said is probably true, because a person in his position can't afford to make a mistake and say the wrong thing.
Right.
So whatever he said, I believe. Now,
again, regardless, let's say Idaho Power and Idaho in general is sitting at some of the cheapest electricity in the entire United States. Great. We are. We're blessed with many resources that help us. Now, mind you, we're still a net energy importer. Fine. That doesn't mean the rest of the country isn't just taking it on the chin because they don't have hydro and wind and everything that we have.
But Idaho has been living on hydro, and they've been living on hydro for a long time. From friends of mine that long before I moved here in 2015 were telling me that Idaho did not have to even go to work about energy prices until some people started questioning them about buying electricity from coal in 2013. And then the people in Idaho Power at senior levels had to go to work and start talking about how they're going to reduce the amount of electricity they get from coal so they can get it from, quote, greener energy.
Yeah.
But it's a problem for Idaho as it is the entire country. Doesn't matter that we pay some of the lowest prices. The bottom line is the utilities are feeling the pressure. Now, Idaho, what's happened in Idaho since 2013 is we've had a very large increase in population. We haven't had a large increase in power production. So the power production that we have in the state of Idaho has been fairly stagnant. What has changed is the amount of power that we have to import into the state of Idaho from other states, because the state of Idaho has not put a lot of new generation in place. I don't know what the average is right now, but at one time, the people down at the state Energy and Natural Resources Committee or whatever it is, when I went down to visit them a few years ago, they said we were importing an average of about 1,500 megawatts a day. That's real electricity. And Idaho should not be importing electricity. Idaho should have had nuclear years ago. Idaho was the world leader in nuclear power in 1953. And the only thing that's happened since 1953 is Idaho has given up that lead. And Idaho needs to take it back, and Idaho is capable of taking it back. But going back to the rest of the world about electricity, and going back to Wyoming for a moment. So the hearing was held, and instead of getting 30%, they got 5%. When nationwide, the average was about 9%, according to friends of mine that are actually in the business of dealing with rates. 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, I called around to two friends of mine. One was in Florida and one was in, I think, Ohio. And I said, what do you think's going to happen to the electricity rates over the next decade? They don't know each other. And both of them told me the same thing. We expect it to at least triple. So if you go back to whatever
what time frame?
I think I had that conversation with him in either 21 or 22.
And he said, by when does he think it'll
10 years, so the next decade.
Oh,
So let's say it's 2022, just for argument's
yeah,
sake.
sure.
So by 2032, they're in the business of dealing with the utilities they work for with the rates. So let's jump ahead to 2032. As you said earlier, it's compounded interest. So if they're going to triple by 2032, then you can take a look at what that means. The reality is, I've been looking at it much closer since then, and I get a monthly report from the Department of Energy. Part of the Department of Energy is the Energy Information Agency or something like that, EIA or whatever it is. They have a monthly report of all the utilities and everything in the United States. I've been looking at that since then. We are seeing more than what is going to be a tripling of our electricity costs by 2032.
It's at a faster pace than triple.
It's at a faster pace. But now, just recently, we have a new considerations.
And could I say one thing
Sure.
real fast? That's a tripling. Again, we come back to if there's even power to be supplied, right? So it's not even that it's going to cost us way more, but we may start experience like we don't have the food to sell to you. It's triple the price. There's no amount you can pay me. We just literally don't have it.
From 2021 to January of 2021 to January of 2025, the average hours of blackouts, they like to call them brownouts, but the average hours of blackouts in those 4 years increased by 100%. And they're forecast to do more. So we have this critical need. There is a utility in this country that I have friends in most of the utilities in the country. I mean, I don't know where they all are. We've got like 3,000 utilities in the United States. We've got 9,000 sources of electricity putting power in the grid. So in looking at, after Wyoming and I started looking at all these others, I get a call one day about a year ago. No, that's not true. I get a call about 4 months ago. Yeah, 4 months ago. Trump was already in. Trump was elected. Trump was inaugurated. And he's been very clear about energy. We need more energy. We need energy for energy security, on and on and on and on. So I get a call from somebody that I know that works for a utility. And their CEO, looking ahead, says, we now are facing people that are showing up here that want to build facilities for manufacturing. We're having people show up here that want to build facilities that are computer data centers, and we don't have the electricity. So he put together this small team. So I just happened to talk to the person yesterday in preparation for this show. I said, "What are you guys doing, and what are you telling your CEO?" The first thing I got back was, "We don't have to tell the CEO anything. He calls us every day." And wants to know what progress we're making at acquiring more electricity or power for electricity in our service area, which is, by the way, this particular utility has an extremely large service area, much larger than Idaho Power. And what they are doing is they are looking at helping the new people that want to build a manufacturing facility, or they want to build a new data center in their state. They're looking at helping them get what's commonly referred to as power generation inside the fence. What does that really mean? Right now, the choice is natural gas to power whatever to make electricity. That's the primary choice. They're looking at microreactors. And they know that microreactors are the real answer.
Okay.
Not small modular reactors, but microreactors.
So when you say energy behind the fence, that means Matt owns a data center and I want to build the data center in your backyard. And you're like, yeah, you can come build this, but you're not going to hook your electricity up to my power line because I don't have enough power for my own house. So I say, okay, look, I'll build my data center in your backyard and I will just give me a gas line and I will make my own electricity. So then I become my own utility system. I don't actually rely on anybody else for electricity. If it goes out, if it doesn't go out, whatever, but I have my own generation. What you're saying is the fuel source of preference right now for behind the fence electrical generation is
inside the fence.
Inside the fence is just a big gas line. And what you're saying is micronuclear is far better than far better than everything, and not small modular reactors. We're talking micronuclear. That's different.
Micronuclear plants. Yeah, and that's what they're talking about. So I hadn't talked to this person in a few weeks. And so when I called him in preparation, because I just wanted to find out what they're doing electricity-wise. So that launched into a whole new conversation. Well, wait a minute now. I've been meaning to call you. They've been meaning to call me about microreactors and small modular reactors. Do you know of any breakthroughs in small modular reactors as far as time goes? I said, there's none. There's zero. Large reactors are out of the question. So now we're back to microreactors. Well, there was a press release recently about the 10 or 11 microreactors that are going to be seen at the Idaho National Laboratory. President Trump wants to have at least 3 of them create power by July 4th of 2026. Great idea, great concept. On a national basis, that's the way he should be talking. Let's talk about reality. The reality is that probably won't happen. Might come close, but it won't happen. Because the facilities up at the INL that they're doing the testing at, once you put a reactor in one of those facilities, one of them is commonly called the dome, then once you start that reactor up and it goes critical, now what you have is not the fuel that you had when it was put in there, but you now have what's called irradiated fuel. Now, your irradiated fuel, the difference between the two is when the reactor was in there by itself, before it was irradiated, before it went critical, before it produced power, I could sleep on it. Not so with irradiated fuel. Creates a whole new situation in handling it, removing it, and storing it. And that's the problem. The cycling of these reactors, microreactors that are going to go through the dome facility and another facility there at the INL. I don't believe that we are prepared to cycle them in a reasonable amount of time and deal with them once they've become irradiated and store them. There is a plan by another group that's not public of how to do all that. Fortunately, here in Idaho, the manufacturer of all of that is located right here in Idaho, in Blackfoot, Idaho.
You and I got to take a trip. You got a nice big truck. Let's jump in your truck, not my Highlander. Let's go up to Blackfoot. We'll get a coffee along the way. We'll shoot a podcast while you're driving. It'll be great. It'll be 2 birds with 1 stone.
We will do that, and I have brought that up with the owner, the co-founder of the company, and his wife. I brought that up with him. He is gone for the next 2 weeks, and he said, when I get back, I'll talk to you that seriously about doing that.
Great.
So he is willing to do that. That in the whole United States, it is the one company that is ready to build these things that, number one, doesn't need any foreign sources. It's building it's ready to build microreactors that don't need triso fuel, that don't need helium, and don't need water. The biggest one is water. Second biggest one is triso fuel. Triso fuel just simply wastes uranium. All of us that have been in the industry that are knowledgeable are just simply wondering, when is the Department of Energy going to stop spending public money on triso fuel because it wastes uranium? We can't afford that. But let's go back to electricity. Electricity is the primary subject. Now, without electricity, you don't get telecommunications. The country lives on electricity and telecommunications, period. We would not be doing what we're doing here right now without electricity. You would not be transmitting these podcasts without the telecommunications associated with it. And telecommunications is not just telecommunications by itself, but it's data centers. We have over 5,400 of them in commercial data centers in the United States right now, and we're building more. None of them are physically protected or cyber protected. None. None that I'm aware of. If they were, somebody would have been challenging me in the last couple of years and saying, McPherson, you're wrong, because this one is. They're not doing that. So our data centers are not protected. They don't have protected electricity or telecommunications associated with them. Then there is another system called SCADA systems, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Systems. They control everything: electricity, water, telecommunications, transportation, natural gas, on and on and on. There's over 1.5 million of them in the United States. As far as I know, I haven't heard of one since 9/11, when it was first brought up, about a week after 9/11. I have not heard of one yet that is cyber protected or EMP protected. So you've got the 5,400 data centers. You've got over 1.5 million SCADA systems that we depend on for these lights. You go get a glass of water in the kitchen, you get that water because of them. You go flush a toilet, you get that replacement water because of them. Not only that, but the sewage, and if it doesn't go down in a septic tank, it goes into a common sewer system for a city. That city wastewater system does not operate without the data centers and without the SCADA systems.
If I may ask, I had somebody reach out to me. By the way, a dump truck of people have reached out about these episodes. It's really fantastic. So you get feedback, I get feedback too. But somebody that I don't know reached out on social media and just said, "Hey, look, how do we do this?" I was like, "How do we do it? Like, I don't understand what you're asking me." And she was essentially saying, "Look, how do we get this message out? Like, how do we get traction?" Every time I talk to you, I'm thoroughly horrified about the sensitivity of in the precarious situation we're in, because you're right. Everything I do, absolutely everything, is hyper reliant on this one thing. And so much of the quality of life that people experience in this state is dependent on cheap accessibility of this one thing. And, that can all change. So with this knowledge, what's the step forward for people?
First of all, live in my head.
Oh.
Because I've been doing this since it finally dawned on me. I'd already been in the Navy nuclear power program for about 10 years before it really dawned on me the precarious position the United States was in. I thought it was going to be taken care of. I have thought many times it was going to be taken care of. It hasn't. One of the fundamental reasons it hasn't is because nobody like you has come along. The utilities didn't find somebody like you. The producers of the equipment that provide us the energy, whether they be boilers, whether they be gas turbines, whether they be geothermal, whether they be nuclear, they didn't find somebody like you. Okay? If I got my way, I would ask you to duplicate yourself, and I would say, how much? However, having said that, one person can make the difference. Successful projects that I have seen over the years have had what I call a Colonel Sanders. You're that Colonel Sanders to our nuclear and electricity needs in the United States.
Well, look, I appreciate that very much. I will tell you that I'm now scheduled to go see a geothermal plant in Oregon. That'll be awesome. And I'm also trying to go down and meet with Scott Nolan. Scott Nolan? It's
Scott Nolan.
I'm trying to get it, but if we can bring this all together, right? Like, I'm just a guy and it's not that expensive to get me a plane ticket. You know, like, I can go places, and if we can continue aggregating information and making it accessible to people, then, I mean, that's, again, it's information, it's education.
You bring up Scott Nolan.
Yeah.
Scott Nolan doesn't know me from Adam. He's one of my latest heroes. Because the approach that they are taking, Energy Matters is a company,
Yes.
I think. The approach that they are taking towards supplying uranium in this country is the right approach. And it is an approach that I wrote about in my first 3 months when I was at the International Atomic Energy Agency in 1989. Think about how long ago that was. And senior people in our government knew it. But the decision makers did not sign off on it and do what was necessary for the United States. Going back to electricity. Our electrical system nationwide is not protected from cyber. Let's just focus on cyber for a moment. According to a senior person in a computer company who's in the security business in 2019, came to one of our meetings, and he said there are over 500 million cyber attacks daily in the United States. 500 million. Not just internally from the United States, but from around the world, because the United States is a favorite target. Why is that? Why is that? Because our government has not done what it has needed to do for the internet over the years. In fact, quite the opposite. Around 1996, the federal government gave up control of the internet to a private company in California. Fast forward to 2016, that company gave up control to another company, which expanded it to basically everybody in the world has some sort of level of control. What our United States Congress needs to do, and they need to do it today, tomorrow, the next day, they need to do it over the weekend and not be home. They need to take back control of the U.S. part of the internet. And they need to control our internet. They need to break it up into segments that are logical segments, still allowing one segment for you and I to use it as we care for our whatever we do with it, but have logical segments that are for the utility industry, the financial industry, the military, etc., and protect them. We cannot protect it the way it is. It's impossible to protect it the way it is.
And this is that articulation about breaking up the internet into individual segments. That's the idea on a much larger scale, but breaking up the large electrical grid, right?
Same way.
So we don't domino all the way down.
Yeah, the electrical grid, the North American grid, covers the United States, Canada, and parts of Mexico. The first time that I realized that there was a North American grid was in 1965 when they had the Great North American Blackout. So I really didn't follow it then. Then in 1969, I'm stationed on a submarine out of Pearl Harbor. There was going to be a meeting in New York City about it. I took leave from the Navy. I went and attended that meeting. I was so impressed with the people who were at that meeting, because here were all these people from utilities saying, here's what we're going to do. I have now been at about 5 more of those meetings. Different people saying the same thing. Here's what we're going to do. They haven't done it. 9/11 came. They haven't done it. In August of 2003, I think, there was a quick meeting that somebody wanted to hold of some of us that are involved in critical infrastructure protection. I flew back to Washington. We were in a meeting for about a day and a half, whatever it was. And one of the guys from somewhere in the Midwest wanted to talk to me alone. He said, let's go to this bar and have a beer and let's have a hamburger. So it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're sitting there. We had just been discussing the North American grid for 2 days. We're sitting in a bar, and the TV flickered. The lights flickered. And he and I looked at each other, and we knew something was coming. Well, the bar had some TV sets there. A few minutes later, there's a break-in, the news break. There is a power outage that was starting, I think, in Ohio, going across the United States, including Canada, and coming down. Another major North American blackout. Think how far that is. Think how many years there is between 1965 and 2003. We already knew that the grid was not being protected. The grid needs to be broken up. The grid needs to be maintained. Don't get me wrong. That's different. We don't need to add to the grid. We need to break it up into logical segments and put in microgrids. And we need to do that as quickly as humanly possible, because our adversaries, primarily being China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and their agents or proxies or spies that are already in this country, they know how weak it is, they know how vulnerable it is, and they know how to cyber attack it in such a way that they can selectively shut down things and create chaos in the United States.
How are we close to any of that? Like, do
Which
we
way?
even the breaking up the grid?
No. No.
No, not at all. Actually, thank you for asking.
No. I mean, there's a guy by the name of Dr. Peter Pry.
Oh my gosh.
There's a guy by the name of Dr. Peter Pry. He's now passed away in 22. I had heard about him. I had never met him. He used to be with the CIA as an analyst. He knew that the work that he and his team were doing was not getting to the president and Congress. He leaves the CIA, has no job, but he knew one of the members of Congress from Maryland. And Peter goes to him and say, here's what you as Congress need to do. This congressman from Maryland pulled him inside, and they created a Congressional EMP, Electromagnetic Pulse Commission. And they put out a report. They pulled in some good people. A couple of them I actually know. And they put out a great report. Did Congress listen? No. They put out a couple of other reports over the years. Did Congress listen? No. But worse, we have people in the government, whether they're in the Department of Defense, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Energy, the Department of Homeland Security, or wherever they may be, they know what we need. But for whatever reason is, their bosses are not picking up on that, and their bosses are not demanding we do it. And part of it is we need to break up the North American grid. You can't fault the utilities. They're in business of making money. They have to comply with all the rules, laws, and regulations, public policy, which is both the government and non-government entities, such as NERC and FERC, such as each one of them has a Public Utilities Commission in each state they need to go to. So their burden is heavy, because not only do they have to comply with all those rules and regulations, laws, but they have to make money for their investors. So I used to fault these CEOs until a couple of friends of mine from submarines, from nuclear power, became CEOs of major utilities. And they said, Mac, you don't understand. Well, I sort of understood, but I really didn't. And then listening to them, what they were going through and the life they were living that they hadn't planned on, the reality hit me and started hitting me back in the late 1990s about the morphing of our utilities from a person who grew up in the utility and knew how we made and distributed electricity to living their life and dealing with the public policy. Has nothing to do with generating electricity or providing it. It has to do with living by the laws, rules, and regulations of changes in public policy at the federal level and the state level and sometimes the local level.
I hopefully will have Senator Risch on in this coming month, and one of the primary things I want to ask him is what policy would need to change in order to unleash at least part of the American nuclear industry and allow them to start getting back after it. Because people talk about, and you've talked at length about policies being the problem. And I want to sit down and ask him the NRC, like what's the NRC doing to help the nuclear market and, commercial market get going? Is it doing anything positive? Like what needs to change in order to get that?
The NRC is doing nothing positive. And we will have a whole segment on the NRC. Now, you talk about Senator Risch. He has the knowledge. He's been there a long time. He's on I don't know what all committees he's on, but I know he's on a lot. Yeah. He was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. So he knows most of the truth. So he's a really good person to ask those questions to. But you're also putting him on the spot in an election year. Mm. We have an election year coming up. So all of the it's going to temper what every politician says. But I believe that Senator Risch has so much knowledge and so much to share. I think he will be a great guest on this show.
Well, again, when he was on, he did come on in December of last year, and I didn't know anything about, not like I know a lot about nuclear now, but far more educated about nuances of it. And he brought up, microreactors. He brought up small modular reactors. If you could put it on a submarine, you can put it on a truck, and that kind of stuff. And now it's okay. Look, you have this knowledge base. Let's talk about it. Explain to me why this hasn't worked, because the technology, it appears, is there now. It's 100% there. So what are we doing? Yeah, but maybe that'll be too much heat in an election year. Who knows?
No, I think he's been around enough. He's old enough, mature enough, and secure in his position that I think it'll be a really good session. And talking about public policy with him is really important.
Yeah. We are coming up against our time limit. Is there anything else you want to say for today? And again, I apologize. I apologize to Cap for capping you on time here today.
I think that electricity is so important. As we've rolled over this week towards this session, I have been really excited about talking about electricity. And we have just begun to talk about electricity.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll do it next week. Episodes every single week, and hopefully we start getting some guests from out of the area as well as they start coming in, and more people are following the series. So thank you for coming in today. You realize we have like a separate spinoff podcast going? Like most podcasts don't make it more than 6 episodes. So we're not most podcasts, but even established podcasts, a lot of times they only do like 1 episode a week. You and I are doing 1 episode a week just on American nuclear and American energy, aside from the other like 10 episodes that come out. So like we have our own dedicated American nuclear series, which is awesome.
Well, as I've told you, it is so important. And during my lifetime of being in the energy business, nobody has ever done what you've done. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your help. We'll do this again.